Just the privilege of being able here to speak with you. I've had alternative energy in my blood for over 30 years now. I've worked with everything from Dow Chemical to phase change salts to solar thermal to all types of storage systems, electrical and air. Worked with solar PV, wind, technology called pyrolysis. I was asked about 6-7 years ago with a company that was based in Pennsylvania to introduce solar photovoltaics to them up in this state. I've lived up in upstate New York about 23 years now. First system that I put in about 5 years ago was in a dairy farm. And really excited still because it was a big help to them, and that's a life that is a challenge, I'll tell you. You know, as far as hard workers and never getting a day off. So the first thing I wanted to let you know is that I've worked with a lot of inventors, a lot of technologies, and one of the big challenges I've had over the years is that a lot of them aren't what they say once they get up and they're installed. And I've seen farmers and people especially do systems like anaerobic digesters and other things, and wind electric, and where they put the systems in and they either maybe produced half or 40% or never did work. And one thing I'm excited about with this technology, I'll explain it longer, the detriment to a lot of the systems I put in, I'll show you a slide in a little while, just a few of them. I've done a lot with different municipalities, school systems in upstate New York area. Some of them were the largest that were put in the whole state when they were put in. But one of the challenges that I've had is that they're looking for flat land that doesn't need a lot of excavation. They're looking at something that's hopefully near 3-phase power and a substation that's in reasonable shape. And good, bad, or indifferent, farmland is the biggest target. Anybody who knows a farmer here who has land, they've been approached probably 1 or 2 times by people wanting to take a look at their land. And the sad thing is that the systems I've put in up to now, once they're on your agricultural land, you can't farm that land for 25 to 40 years, so it takes out of agricultural production. I ran into technology from Italy about, right now, I've been working with them about a little over 2 years. The exciting thing here is it's been in use in Italy, what I'm going to show you, for over 7 years successfully. They have multiple systems in Italy. The first thing I'm going to do is just show you a short video, because I want to do that before I get started, so that you'll see this is not a pipe dream. As of we're speaking today, there are no systems like this in the U.S. I've been working with different universities and farmers. We're looking at a candidate for the first system. But I know it could be a phenomenal help to farmers, to communities, to the agricultural scenario, because it lets the farmer lease their land if it's a bigger scenario. So they get the income off the acreage of leasing the land, plus there's energy production on the land. And we'll be open for questions hopefully at the end here. If we can do this and have it work, we'll be in good shape here. This is just a real short video clip, if we can get this on.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit louder.
show you a system that's been in operation for over 7 years. You'll see as we go on.
Where was that happen?
In Italy. In Italy. Yep. And we'll get into a little bit later. There's systems going in all over the world right now. In Europe, and Japan, and China, and Africa. Because of the value of the land is so valuable, and to give up the agricultural aspect of it, it's a shame. So now let's see if we can get the PowerPoint back up on here. This will work fine. Remtech is the company that has all the worldwide patents, and the CEO, Giancarlo Genesee, is the gentleman that's been here over with me. In fact, you got a chance to meet him, didn't you, when he was here? The first thing I did when I came up, because I'm not a farmer, is I have some friends that are retired farmers, and I asked them to meet him the first time, because I wanted their opinion if this makes sense or not. And all the people I worked with, some of the gentlemen were retired, very successful farmers, other ones were still farming. The biggest complaint that they had was, we don't want to hit the posts. And with the equipment that the farmers have today, that doesn't seem to be as much of a challenge. These are just some of the systems that I've put up in upstate New York over the years. And Avon Central School District, Village Clifton Springs, City of Canandaigua, there's actually 2 systems there. Town of Walworth. These took up farmland, especially Town of Walworth, Avon, and one of the parts on the City of Canandaigua that is actually there. That's about a 2 megawatt system. And it is actually built on an old waste dump site, which that's exciting to me because they couldn't build on it, and we were able to do that. So that's been a real plus. But again, we have the ability now to do this, and we could have, any one of these could have been a situation. They could have still farmed the land. The farmer could have, or whoever owned the land, could have still got a lease on the property, or used it for both if they owned it, like their own farm, a smaller system. They could get the electricity, the kilowatt hours in the crops. And that's another thing that we'll get into later. One of the big challenges I saw was when you put something like that over a field, what is that going to do to your crop production? We'll get into that later. I'm working with a team of a lot of people right now. Jabez is a company out of Iowa. Their specialty, they put in, I think right now about over 600 megawatts of power with wind and solar. Working a lot with a company called RES in Virginia that they specialize in solar and off-grid solar projects. They've done a lot, even with different NASCAR, and they've done a lot of interesting projects in building in areas even for residential, where the whole residential areas are solar. I associate Mr. Nick Masucci, who was with ABB Corporation for about 25 years. Nick's now on his own, like I am. And Nick is invaluable. He used to go around the world with ABB to any type of a new technology they wanted that had to do with alternative energy. He's a phenomenal resource, and then myself at In So Much Solutions, that's just a little company since I've been on my own. Give you a little idea, Remtech, it's an Italian company active in the renewable energy sector for agricultural applications. That's what they do. Their target is to produce clean energy, leaving the land available for agriculture. Sustainability, producing electric energy to preserve the environment versus fossil fuels. Preserve the agricultural reality, integrate new technologies from the surrounding environment. What is Agrovoltaico? It's an innovative system that combines two fundamental needs, food and energy production. Agrovoltaico is a modular system based on the main unit called the tracker. Each tracker is composed of a support structure made by two vertical poles. The distance between those two vertical poles is about 39 feet, although we can adjust that versus the farmer's needs and the rows and the height of his equipment. It's got a horizontal steel profile able to rotate around its axis. So the long bar at the top, it can flip those this direction. It also has 4 smaller profiles mounted on perpendicular to the horizontal axis, able to rotate around their axis. So this is what you call a tracking system. The solar modules actually will turn and can track when the sun comes up, they'll face the east. As it goes to the west, it completely tracks the sun. This will produce about, when you look at strictly a fixed system, it will do 25% greater production as far as electricity versus something that is stationary. And then it also has the ability, if it's dual tracking, to track the height of the sun and the horizon in the year. In the winter, it's a lot lower. In the summer, it's a lot higher. And that can get us up to about 45% over a fixed system. And each section has 32 modules, which rotate again to follow the sun path during the day. Advantages is that high efficiency, 45% compared to a fixed plant. Intelligent shadow management. Now this is something, even the people that have the patents and Remtech, when they put the first system in Italy, that's been running over 7 years, they thought the shadow is going to be a real serious scenario in affecting crop production. And that was one of the questions, the first questions that I asked Giancarlo when he came in town. I said, well, you know, what is it going to do? It's going to reduce the crop production by 50%. Been very, very surprising.
How much wind will they take?
We can adjust that per the wind requirements in any area. You'll see that, point this here, if I can get this side working. You can see this, the cables that are on there that go across there up above. Let's see if I can get a pointer on it. Can you see that cable right here? We can adjust the cable and everything else according to the wind load. And we have that done by an engineer. Typically, any of the systems I've put in over the years, they have a minimum requirement of 90 miles an hour, and you can go up from there. But each area of the country, they have its own legislation, and they're required to go to a certain amount of wind, and you can pay more if you want to go higher.
How about ice?
There's a really nice thing about the whole situation. The ice situation and the snow load, I mean, that's one thing that surprises a lot of people. I grew up in Michigan, lived in northern Michigan, and that's one of the first questions we get. Most people are shocked, and I mean, any of you here have seen a lot of solar going up in this state. And the only reason it goes up because it works. And we have enough weather data here that we can go any place in this country, in the world, and look at 40 or so years of weather data and how much sun we get on an average. And we can tell you on an average what it's going to produce, and it's very accurate. So the snow, one of the nice things about this is if you see some of the fixed systems, you'll see we get bad snowstorms up here. You know, they'll get a foot of snow, even if it's tilted. And one of the advantages of this, we literally, once the snow comes, we can literally turn that this way and it dumps all the snow off. Yeah. And as far as the ice and that has not been a challenge so far where they've had it. Okay? They intelligently can manage the shadow. It's non-invasive and it's resistant to the weather up here. Again, here's the whole scenario. If you just have an acre of land with crops, you're going to get 100% of your crop production. You're going to get 100% if you only have solar on it. But we've been able to combine it. They're actually getting with crops like corn, wheat, rice. They're getting 95 to 105% of their normal crop production. And what actually has happened is, what they found, because we're providing some shading, if you get kind of a drought season, because a little bit of shading provides less evaporation, in some years like that, they're gonna get actually a little better crop production than they normally would. Which has been, that was very surprising to me, because I thought it would, you know, maybe 70% or 60%. But that's what they found up to the point here. Again, the climate change, that's a big question, whatever side you're on with the climate change. But they feel that this is going to be a plus, especially because producing the electricity by the sun and helping the rest of the things that harm the atmosphere. Another really great thing is they have a major university in Italy. And if any of your farmers would like to see like the study on corn, if you can leave a name, Felipe, if they can leave a name with you and an email address, I'm happy to send you this study. The nice thing is this particular university, Professor Amaducci, have been working with this system for a long time. They have a software program and things up that if you can come with us and say, hey, this is the area of the country we want to put the system in, this is the crops we want to grow. We can actually, with the type of tracking we have right now, we can run it any direction to keep your crop rows in the same direction. We don't have to be straight to the south as a fixed system would be. And they'll do a study for me on anything here. They've been really good. They're willing to work with people and universities here in this country. And what they're looking at is how to optimize vegetable and energy production, how to, the study he's talking about here to simulate corn yield in agricultural scenarios, and to compare the efficiency and land use of existing system, biogas, corn, and ground PV. Now, they did a study in Italy, which is interesting because I've worked with anaerobic digesters. And just looking at the use of acreage, I just wanted to show you this example. They have a fixed system on 331 acres there that produce 75.4 gigawatt hours. They had another situation there in the same area that 3,459 acres, and it produced 36.44. And you can see that definitely with solar photovoltaics, it was a real plus. This is the actual formulas that they used. And again, I just think of the benefits, advantages of being able to harvest agricultural products and solar kilowatt hours off the same acreage. And that's what I'm excited about. We don't sacrifice the agriculture. They did a lot of field tests on corn, okay, to study the effects of this on corn. Results, they said plants with 8% shadow had more transpiration, less net assimilation than plants with 20% and 30% shadow. But the results were the plants with more shadow have experienced a better efficiency in water management. Now, I don't know on particular farms and some of the things you're working with, how much of an advantage is that is here for you, a particular crop. Again, test, they call it maize in Italy, what we call corn, effects on the shadow split leaf area. Leaves are thicker when shadow is lower and vice versa. Stem leaves ratio is lower when the shadow is lower and vice versa. More light equals thicker stems, less light equals larger leaves. However, this is only true in the first phase of plant growth, is what the university had found. And the higher shadow does not mean less production in a lot of scenarios. They did other studies, and there's studies going on right now as I'm speaking. They've got facilities with tomatoes, okay? The study they did with tomatoes that are very sensible to luminosity peaks that cause a decrease in production. Results are the plants with 8% shadow have had more transpiration, less net assimilation than plants with 20% and 37% shadow. But the results are plants with more shadow have experienced a better efficiency in water management. Some of the crops that they're already growing under right now, corn, wheat, rice, medical herbs, rape, protein, pea, soy, coffee, tea, berries. And one of the things that was a major interest to me working with farmers I've had a chance to work with, there's a potential with some of these crops, certain teas they had like in China, that they couldn't take full sun all the time. They actually, at a real high value crop there, they're actually able to get about 30–40% or more better crop production off them because they can control the shadow and provide some shadow. They are also doing some experimenting right now with the shadow, okay? They have different algorithms they can do this on computers right now that they have set up at the University of Italy. And we can actually take, whether it's in a greenhouse or whether it is in a situation where it's in an open field, we can actually make a decision as the farmer. Do you want to produce more electricity, or do you want to favor more sunlight on a certain time of the year with your crop and get a little better harvest? Same in the greenhouse and in open field. And they're doing a lot of work with greenhouses now too. And they can simulate all of this and can tell exactly how much shade we're going to get with the system and how far the rows and things are apart. Just skip this here. This is just a simulation of a greenhouse scenario. One of the things this system can do, it can actually go over an existing low greenhouse or low buildings. And again, certain crops in the greenhouse, you'll see a lot of people doing shading on the greenhouse to not let so much sun in at certain times. We can control that, and they have all the software is already done, and they're doing this right now. Another thing that they've experimented with is putting small wind generators on the structure, because the structure is already there. You have to be careful that that goes in an area where you have high enough winds to make it logical to do that. And they've done with shading nets. They can do a lot of things with certain crops that they've done. And a lot of people ask me about irrigation. Can they provide irrigation and even fertilize off that structure? And the answer is yes, because you've got the structure already there. They have done a lot with research in over existing buildings, even over open parking lots. You know, where that's an area, especially with hospitals and things, and areas that don't have a lot of parking availability, and they don't have a lot of open space, especially in towns and cities. It's something that can come in and go over those areas. As far as around the world right now, in China, rice crops, 3 new plants this year. Since 2016, they've been doing it.
Japan, that the tea I was telling you about, they've actually been able to increase that harvest. That's a special tea. It's a very valuable crop on there. 2 plants in 2019 that's going in. Italy, they just had another system going up for the university with the professor that I was speaking of right now, because they were so excited about the research they've done on their existing facilities in Italy. Africa, they're doing cacao crops. France, working with grapevines, trying to see how that's going to work with grapevines. And again, Japan, 2 megawatt plant on rice crops this year. Again, Remtech, they do develop innovative solutions that create sustainable energy. The one thing I don't want to forget to mention too, we are looking for a USA manufacturer. I'm not a fan of bringing stuff in from overseas when we have the abilities to do it here. And when I was younger, I had a lot of experience with fabrication and metals. And if anybody here knows of someone that's interested, I've been sitting and talking to different manufacturers that can put these together. That's very important to me, that that would be a result of what I'm doing. Again, some interesting options to consider is the wind. And they do have specific solutions for greenhouses and other available technology. We're open to people. Some of the best ideas come from farmers and people that aren't scientists or engineers. And we're very open to listening to ideas and concepts. Another thing that I want to mention here to you real briefly is one of the challenges I've been looking for over 30 years is a good way to store electricity. Because if you're the wind isn't always blowing. If you're solar, you don't always have the solar. And I believe at this point, working with JBES and some of the other people, I think I found something finally that makes a lot of sense. I've given you a brochure on that, and it's something that's coming finally to this state. They have special incentives right now for electrical storage, but the challenge has been enormous as far as safety, fire hazard, explosion. The fact that typically around 10 years, the lithium ion, and you hear stories about cell phones blowing up in planes and catching on fire. The building codes and things prevent me from doing a lot of things that I can do now with this system. They have systems around the world. They have some on military bases here. I'm going to get a chance to vet that in the next 2 months and visit, because I've just learned from the past that I've got to see it, work it, and talk to somebody that's done it before I sell it. But I wanted you to be aware that this is something that for the first time I've seen. And you can look at the sheets that I gave you, but the nice thing about this is that it is a type of battery that uses iron, salt, and it has no hazardous materials in it. It is great for the environment. The other thing is that the challenge has been the life of existing batteries. I have one of 6 girls, and one of my granddaughters right now had a situation where she had an electric vehicle and her whole car caught on fire because it went up in fire. Her battery, which wasn't fun. At least she wasn't in it at the time. It was just in her driveway. But for little larger systems right now, I'm very, very excited about the potential here. And if any of you are familiar with the demand charges in any of your farms or buildings here, your typical electrical bill, if you're using, unless you have a special arrangement on a farm, if you're in the vicinity of using around 2,000 kilowatt hours a month, they put you on demand charges. And that demand charges is, in this state, is about somewhere to 40 to 90% of your delivery charges on your electrical bill from the utility company.
So some of the systems I showed you earlier where I say provide like 100% of the kilowatt hours they use, they still have to pay 40 to 90% of their electric bill on their delivery charges because they have to use the utility company for their battery backup. In that situation, we can help with this type. They already have software done, if you're not familiar with the term peak shaving. What they can actually do, your delivery charges, even if you only peak what you draw off the grid for say 5 minutes in a month, they base your whole electric bill usage on that figure. And the software now, if you store some electricity that you would size to your system and your usage, once you start drawing so much, just like if you had an electrical generator, it pulls you off the grid and supplies power from the battery until it gets down to a certain point and puts you on the grid, which in certain circumstances can be a marvelous savings and a good investment for you. It's just a little more about the battery. I'll let you look onto your sheet there, and any questions you come to me, because I'm still learning this. But the long and the short of it is that electrical storage that is environmentally safe for the first time. Permitting, they don't have the fire hazards and things, so you don't have the regulations as far as close to an existing building, etc. And it's economically feasible for the first time. It's starting to look that way now. You're going to start seeing a lot more storage, even other than this system coming in the state, because there are often certain grants and things right now in this state through NYSERDA and things to get storage because they need it with the situation with our grid. And again, I want to thank you. I'll be open to questions here as long as you want to keep me. And it's again, it's been a real privilege to be able to just present this to you. I'm very excited about it. It's a big challenge getting a first thing in. It always has been, but we're looking for the first installation here in the U.S. And the best thing I can do is get people like yourselves excited about it. If you have an application, you can come to me. We'll do everything we can. And Giancarlo says he's welcome anybody to come to Italy to see the systems there. I haven't anybody turned that down yet. So that's where we're at. So, perfect. Do you want? Yes.
Yeah. So, who's going to own the system as you install it? Will it be a company, or will you be selling the entire system to the landowner, or how will that work?
We can. One nice thing about Giancarlo, probably a first system right now, because I haven't found a U.S. manufacturer yet, would come from Europe. He doesn't want to own the system. He doesn't want to manufacture it. He just wants to do the engineering and upgrading. What will happen is a farmer, a business, municipality, anybody, if they want to buy it and purchase a system, they can own it and run it. Typically, any of the systems that you've seen here that I showed you, that I put in, they work under what's called a power purchase agreement, or a financer will come in, similar to a lease type of situation, but a power purchase agreement, a little different the way it works, where if it's a large system usage, you'll have somebody invest in it just to take advantage of the tax credits. The federal tax credits and the special depreciation they have right now, it's a real big benefit. The tax credits are going down starting next year, but there's still enough that it's worthwhile for an investor. So you can go either way. You can buy a system, you can own it. I would say right now it's not feasible for like a real tiny system. Probably size-wise, we'd have to take a look at the usage on any system. Probably somewhere around a 500 kilowatt DC system would be where it would be ideal. We can certainly do smaller, but an ideal system would be like about a 1 megawatt to get started. But definitely we can do that. We can work with you, and we have people that will finance it and that are familiar enough with the system that they'll take the risk. Yeah. The power purchase agreement, the ones I like, we filed in after 7 years, you'll have the right to purchase a system. And you don't have to, but you'll have that ability to do so if you choose. Yeah.
What
Yes,
type
sir.
of maintenance is it with these systems, and what are the records as far as maintaining the system?
That's a question that I ask right away. They have, is it a little more maintenance than a fixed system? Yes, because it does have motors and things in it. But the maintenance that they found in Italy is maybe, if I'm remembering right, he said about 10% higher than what normally happens with a fixed system. And with the extra production and things, and the fact that you could still grow crops under it, that's a plus. And each section is individually set up, plus the way they run with strings with it, if something goes down and needs repair, it doesn't take the whole system down. And only while they're repairing it takes a little bit of it down. But that's one of the questions that I asked too. Yes, sir.
What's the life expectancy of the units themselves?
One of the things, amazing things about solar photovoltaics, and like I said, if you caught me in the early 20s, you might find me on the top of a wind tower trying to put blades back on a machine, is that solar photovoltaics, okay, the panels that they have right now, the tier 1 panels, have a 25-year guarantee that they will be producing at least 80% of the power that they had when they were new at 25 years. And hard to find anything with that kind of a warranty as far as the, and then the other thing, you know, like the poles and posts, they're all galvanized and things, so that's gonna hang in there too.
Well, the warranty's only as good as the parent company that owns it, and if they're no longer around.
Absolutely, and that's why any of the, absolutely, that's, and you look around here, who would have thought Kodak would have gone through what they went through? But absolutely, you're right, but that's one of the reasons why the people that invest that, they insist on going with tier 1 modules, and they're, most of the time, the largest, they'll always go with someone that they feel that company is strong enough, rather than someone building something in their garage, they'll be there taking. But is there a risk that they may not be here? Absolutely, yeah. But that's why you want to be careful not to, you know, I'm not saying don't ever buy something, somebody builds it in their garage, but they may not be around as likely as a larger company.
What's the cost to dismantle it and the life expectancy, and where do you get rid of it?
You know, good question. Number one, any power purchase agreement, any agreement I ever do, that's part of the agreement, okay? They have to have that money put in escrow, okay? For when the system is done, all the money's there to take everything out and return the land to its natural state as best they can do it. And that's always in there. I wouldn't even consider an agreement that didn't have that in there. And there's been a,
What is the cost?
what's that?
What is the cost? How do you determine how much?
Well, that's decided each system, the size, components, how it is. I mean, I'm not an engineer, and I don't personally do that, but the people that put the systems up, and they would sit and talk with you, and everybody would agree, hey, this is the cost, and this money's gonna be put aside, and this is gonna take. But one of the things that, Farmington, New York, I just attended a meeting there about a month ago. They have a farmer there that they want to put a fairly large system in, and there's been a lot of arguing that they don't want it in. And one of the things, I think I was the only person at that meeting that was favorable to what was going on. And the questions that came up and the other people that spoke, you know, they were concerned about polluting the ground. And I was asking them, I said, well, the components in the module that are exposed to the weather are glass and aluminum, and I was pointing out the windows you have on here are glass and aluminum. And I said, it rains on that all the time, are you polluting your building? Are you worried about that in your buildings? And they said, well, no. I said, well, That's really what you're looking at. You know, there's some valuable metals in there, some other things, but those aren't things that are gonna be detrimental, and you have enough of those around right now that people will take those apart components with aluminum or steel and glass, just like they have glass on windows. And there was a lot of things that came out, well, it's gonna pollute the groundwater. I said, well, I don't understand how rain's gonna pollute the groundwater. It's raining on there now. And so I didn't think that was a valid concern on my end. But there are people that will tell you that. But again, I don't see, if you look at any of the systems that have been up on universities or buildings, for a lot of years, I've never heard of one that's been a pollution challenge, that's hurt groundwater. I don't know anything in there that would. Because if, for some reason, you get water inside the modules, everything is monitored 24/7, okay? As soon as something's not working right, we're notified immediately. And the landowner would, and even if it's his personal system, you're gonna know if something's not working. You take that module out or repair whatever needs to be repaired. So, and believe me, any of these companies that own these systems that aren't producing electricity, because they get paid by every kilowatt hour that gets put in the grid, they're out there fixing it. So I've never seen that as a hazard in the years I've been working it. At least to my knowledge, I think I put the first standalone system, photovoltaic system in Michigan over 30-some years ago. So that's how long, at least, I've been exposed to photovoltaics, and so that's my thought. Yes, sir?
What's the difference in like payback cost per acre compared to a traditional system? If you take out the benefits, throw in profit?
You have about, this system takes about 10% more acreage. So, and it's, most people ask me that question over the years, and they say, well, what's the payback? Is it 7 years? Is it 10? Is it 15? And that's not really, in my opinion, that's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is this a good investment or not? And by that I mean, do you really care if you invest in a system and you're making 10% on that investment? If it's 10% and it takes 10 years to pay back rather than 7? Or if you're, you know, or would you rather have something that paid back in 7 years, but you only made 2 or 3% on it? So that's one of the things it's really changed the way I've looked at things. You want to look at what the cost is to put the system in, what you're going to get back, and either it's a good investment or it's a bad investment. And I base it not on how many years the payback is, but how good the percentage of payback is. You know, your return on your investment. Just like if you're in the stock market, you'd rather make 10 or 12% than be in the hole or make 2%, right, over a period of years. And that's one of the great things. The system, a lot of legislation has changed in this state over the years that I've been working here. And right now, the way it sets, that you have NYSERDA, you have federal tax credits, you have special makers depreciation. With the farm that I put in, Skinny Atlas, they were able to go back even a year before the system was put in to get those credits. The cost of components have come down because there's so much of that going on right now. The technology is improving. And the question I'm asked very often is, well, why should I do that this year? Because maybe the technology will increase X amount if I wait 2 or 3 years. And the challenge of that is the grants right now are going down. Federal is going down 4% in 2020, and then from there it's going down to 10%. So even 4% of the total cost of the system that you can get credits for is an enormous amount of money. Yes, ma'am.
Have you looked at existing solar laws in this area and compared whether the requirements of this system will fit into existing solar laws?
Existing solar laws have been a real challenge all over the state. We have counties that don't allow any solar. Right now there's moratoriums. We have some that won't let build over 10 kW systems. You can't build a bigger size. To be honest with you, it's developing one of the biggest challenge right now, I'm sure with the county here, is what regulations we put in. And people I work with have been very instrumental sitting on with boards and helping to come up with the best regulations there. I mean, I haven't personally investigated Genesee County right now to see exactly what your regulations are.
Some of us are in the process, some of the smaller
Yes.
municipalities writing their solar laws.
Yes.
So what I wanna know is, have you seen any contradictions in what this system requires for construction versus the height restrictions or setbacks or whatever?
No,
of your
because
system?
right now, at least where we're at, and of course, the first one I put in, that's the first thing we'll have to do is deal with your planning boards and the regulations. All the electrical regulations and whether it requires a fence or not, all those things are local jurisdictions. The wind loading that was brought up before, we're gonna have to meet whatever requirements are there. All the safety and fire codes, all of those things are, they're nationwide, they're statewide, they're county-wide.
Well, here's I automatically think of a height restriction. So if, I don't know, if Felipe is.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things we thought of first is the height.
Are you, and do you have some numbers that you can give out to the municipalities?
Well,
while we're in the process of
these
writing?
systems are 13 to 16 feet high or
Yes.
something like that?
About 15 foot high. Basically, we need to talk with the farmer. What crops is he gonna grow, what harvesting equipment, what equipment he's gonna be in there to till the land, and we can adjust that height. But right now, the typical height's about 15 foot.
So I
off the
think
ground.
from just thinking about this, I think that even the current models that the state provides are not really adequate to deal with this sort of system. I think you almost have to create a separate tier, like we have if you're familiar with these models that the state or maybe some of the laws you may have at your own town, you have the large commercial systems that go on land. You have the smaller ones that are put on basically your own property to net meter that electricity. And we have those two tiers. We almost need like a third one in between that is large like this, but also accommodates agriculture. I think it's sort of a gap right now in the models that we have. And as we hear more about this kind of technology, and if towns are interested in permitting this type of solar versus others or all of them, this is something that they have to keep in consideration. Okay, if it's going to be a solar plus agriculture type of setup, then maybe the height restrictions aren't the same, the fencing restrictions aren't the same. Those kinds of things have to be more flexible to accommodate this sort of system.
Yeah, I get that it has to be more flexible.
Mhm.
The town of Alabama's just been working on theirs, and so we put in a height restriction. So now this information comes out, if that's something the county or the state wants to facilitate, we should know about that before they're all passed, or if.
Yeah, no, definitely, but such new changing, yeah.
So that's something the county should comment on. In the town of Alabama, we put in there an encouragement for agricultural use of some sort. We just didn't envision this.
Yeah, we didn't either.
And you know what?
I don't
This
think
is the one thing that's nice about this. We can meet like this, and we can work together. I know in some cases we're going to have to go in front of boards and ask for a variance if they have something like that up and have to be approved. The thing that I've seen that's really hurt is when somebody comes in and says no solar, or only the size. When there's really benefits, it's a big benefit, and you don't want to go into an area where it's going to be harmful to your town and your county, but also is it going to be harmful to say no, because that hurts the farmers, it hurts businesses, it hurts homeowners, if they can't utilize, good, bad, or indifferent, they haven't figured out how to tax wind and sunshine so far.
Yeah.
And so It'd be nice to take
mention-
advantage of it.
Just to mention one other thing, in preparation for this presentation, I did reach out to state agencies because this type of technology, you know, there's a saying that innovation tests regulation, and I really think that the state has been caught flat-footed because they've really been pushing solar technology, but they haven't really addressed the issues of impacts in agriculture. And then when new technologies like this show up, they're even more clueless as to how to proceed. And what we've had, I reached out and they said, you know, how does this affect your tax? Because right now, if you put in solar panels on your agricultural field, you're taking that agriculture out of production, right? So you're no longer getting an agricultural assessment on your land. You know, it's taxed differently. But in this scenario, you're still farming it. Could you still actually get an agricultural assessment on the land? How does the energy production on top of the agricultural production affect the taxes? And those are all unanswered questions right now. And I did reach out to all the state agencies. I hope to get an answer at some point, but you know, I think it just comes to the fact that everything's moving so fast, no one's really able to cut up. And they really, I mean, they got ahead of themselves because they have been promoting solar and putting all the incentives for solar, but then, you know, you get new technologies and new things like this, and all of a sudden they don't have an answer. So, you know, we're hoping that, you know, this presentation, and you know, maybe as I share, I am videotaping it, and hopefully, I shouldn't say videotape because there's no tapes anymore, but digitally recording it, and then hopefully we can share it with some of the state agencies, and they can understand, you know, you guys have to think a little, you know, broader and find out, you know, how does this affect farming? How does it affect, you know, your taxes? How does it affect all those things? So.
Yep.
But, you know, if we don't have this conversation, that's never going to happen.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Another question. Over in Italy or wherever these are already installed,
Yes.
do you know if they're raising sheep or raising birds or doing any kind of livestock production underneath them?
Right now, the systems that they have are not, but that's been raised up here, like where they're raising beef and cattle, can that happen? And I can just tell you from experience a little bit, a lot of places are looking at putting sheep and fixed arrays on the ground. There's a lot of research as far as on your systems that are fixed mounted, what kind of plants to put around them so that you don't have to cut the grass around it and the vegetation so often. They have special plants. Special people now are specializing in that, you know, for maybe, you know, with the challenge with honeybees and things, to be able to use those for pollinators and put different flowers and things there that draw them in. There's a lot of possibilities there. Yep. And would that work over that? Absolutely, yes. You know, I did a presentation the other day, and somebody asked me if a bull that weighed, you know, hundreds of pounds hit one of those posts, what would happen? And, you know, I think you have to use some logic in there. And yes, sir.
In your system,
Yes.
who pays the difference between the agricultural value and the commercial value of the, like, who normally pays for that?
Well, if it's a power purchase agreement, okay, what happens is, let's just say you had a farm and somebody came in and said, well, I want to take these 50 acres or 100 acres and put a big solar farm on with you. And you put it, whether it's our system or a standard system now, you would agree on a price per acre that you would be paid to let them do that if you were a farmer. And typically, right now, most of what I see usually is between $800 and $1,200 an acre that you would get a yearly payment on. But that's all negotiable. It's all negotiable. But you cut a deal that would last the life of the system. So you know, but that's the nice thing here. If we can cut a deal and you can still rent acreage and you can still grow a crop and make money on growing a crop, at least you know for that acre, each acre of land, you're going to get a minimum of this per year, per acre. Does that help? Answer your question okay? Yep. You had a question, sir?
I was just curious, you started the conversation here this evening talking about the fixed units having to be close to the major power lines?
Yes.
Is this is set up the same way, I'm assuming, correct?
Absolutely, and the reason is, okay, anybody here ever had property that you had to have power brought in, that wasn't power on the land? To say it's expensive is putting it mildly. So that's what happens is, one of the things that we have to do is research with the utility company. And they're gonna tell you, number one, it's a big advantage to have three-phase power. Okay, so that's one of the first things I look for on a parcel of land is three-phase power. Then you wanna see that is it reasonably close to a substation. Then you've gotta see, does that substation in a situation, and now the Public Service Commission, at least we can get that information a lot quicker. They're gonna tell you, well, do we have to run from the substation to where your system is going? Do we have to run a lot larger line, take all the lines down? Well, to just have them run something for a half mile or 2 miles or 5 miles is extraordinary cost. And sometimes that kills a project. That's why farmland near three-phase power that has it and near a substation can be golden, and that's why they get looked at real hard. Yep. Yep. Any other questions?
Does that change if you have a battery system component on top, or do you still need that?
If you had a standalone, of course, if you had a standalone battery system that wasn't connected to the grid, it wouldn't make any difference. Because now you're basically your own utility company. If you're still gonna use battery backup, would be your utility company, which is what's used now. It'd make a difference. It can make or kill a project very much. To give you an idea, when I worked with Avon Central School District, the utility came in and originally said that it was gonna cost us $750,000, like to $1 million for them to bring power in there to let us do that for the interconnection. And we figured a way to do that, to go in 2 different directions that put that cost down. But that very often will kill a project because the people investing in it, for them to make that much extra money, then we couldn't pass enough savings on to the school districts and places. So that's very, very critical where three-phase power is and the substation.
It may be a little naive to this, but the people that are putting up these solar projects now, they're not their own solar panels. They're purchasing the solar panels from some other company, and then they're... Yes. Right? Has anybody approached you about your solar panels to install in these large farms?
Well, number one, we
Or
don't
you
make...
won't sell them?
We don't make solar panels. We always buy somebody else's panels that made it.
So you're just selling the system that turns...
We're selling the system, the technology, the software, the structure that you see there, you know, the post and all the engineering that goes into turning it and tracking the sun. And typically what anybody does, the financer, just like you do, you know, you'll go out and with all the tariffs and everything that are going on right now, it's really devastated a lot of the projects here. Because our president put, 25% tariffs on any imports, and we had very few people in this country making solar modules, and especially at any quantity, that was all coming from Europe and Asia, so that's really been a challenge. But what we typically do when there's a big project, when that comes to, and the largest cost to any of these systems are the solar modules, by far, okay? And they'll take a look at the top brands, and they'll go to each one of them and say, hey, these have all 25-year warranties, and these are the companies that we think are likely to be in business, 10 or 15 years from now, and they'll take the best price because they're all conventionally the same size. Yeah, so they'll shop just like you would. Yeah.
What are the health and safety risks of working underneath these panels? Stray voltage, wires?
Well, I'd never heard the dairy farm I put in Skaneateles, the Fesco farm. That's one of the first questions they asked me. They said, well, what does this do as far as stray voltage? And I said, what's that? I I thought, I've never even heard of that question before. And they explained to me, and I didn't, there's actually guys, okay, that have a business that go out on these dairy farms, and especially a lot of them, they, you know, the way the farms were wired years ago, they actually have current running in the ground. And the cows know it, and, you know, it hurts their milk production. Some places they won't go in, and there are guys that come and do studies. I have seen no detriment as far as stray voltage at all, and they haven't either. Those are things that they literally had to check every circuit we did there. They had someone come in and see what was causing the stray voltage. Yeah. That answer your question, okay?
A little bit, but, I mean, it's a known fact that this stray voltage, that's why there are ground wires coming down off them all.
That's right, but what happened is a lot of these farms, they were never grounded right, and they were kind of, you know, when electricity first came out, they started putting stuff in, and they added this, and they didn't do it up to code when they did it. And
Well, we were told, then it goes through the ground.
It does.
So that's why it affects the cattle.
That's right.
Because and the urine from the cattle will actually attract and give it a
Yep.
pathway.
Yep.
So when you put in a system of this size, what is done to help prevent that?
Everything is electrically grounded and everything right, so you don't have that, okay? I've never heard that that's a challenge at all. And I checked that out a lot with what I did at Skinny Atlas. And that was the question. Even the people that made the panels in the system, they've never even heard anybody ask that question before. But we literally had someone come in, and they had a stray voltage problem, but it wasn't caused by what we put in. It was there already. Just the way it wasn't properly grounded, and neutrals weren't right, and I'm not an electrical engineer, but that was the challenge that caused that. Yeah. But I'd never heard of that before. Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate
Thank you so much.
coming up.